Ice is by far the worst type in Pokemon, so I'm wondering if I can beat up Pokemon Scarlet Hardcore Nuzlocke, meaning I'm only allowed to catch one of each ice type in the game, and of course, any of my frozen friends who faint will have to be boxed forever. Despite being the worst type, you tend to find ice types towards the end of Pokemon games, and Generation 9 is no different, with most ice types located on Glaciado Mountain. This makes it extremely difficult to get a hold of ice types in the early game, and to get our first one, we've got to catch a Flabebe. And I know what you're thinking, Flabebe is not an ice type. However, our Flabebe is not for battling. Instead, we're immediately taking it to this guy in Cortondo who's willing to trade it for his Snom. Now, Snom isn't the greatest Pokemon between its frankly embarrassing stat spread and butt-shaped face. Snom's saving grace is it only takes a few minutes of picnics to get it up to max friendship, thus evolving it into Frostmoth. This thing puts all of its effort into its base special attack stat of 125 with otherwise pretty crappy stats. But a high attacking stat is kind of all we need for the early games, as we can pick up good TMs like Air Slash. I also make sure to go all the way to Levincia just to pick up a wide lens, since I've got way too much experience missing 95% accurate Air Slashes for one lifetime. Snozelot one-shots everything but Teddiursa, but with a lucky flinch, it doesn't even get to hit us before we take it out with a second Air Slash. With one badge down, we now need to take on Cloth, and with Frostmoth being quad weak to rock, I needed a new Pokemon. Thankfully, we can get another ice type by picking up an Eevee just outside Cortondo, and then traveling to the other side of the world to pick up an Ice Stone. With it, we can instantly evolve our Eevee into Glaceon, which is by far the least powerful evolution in the game. Despite that, it is our best option to take on Cloth, and before doing so, I make sure to pick up the TM for Water Pulse. Cloth is definitely still problematic for Glaceon, especially with its Rock Smash to lower our defense. Thankfully, it just wastes the first turn going for Block, since I'm not planning to swap out anyway, giving me the chance to go for Rain Dance to boost the power of my water type moves. For the first phase, a single rain boosted Water Pulse is enough to take Cloth into the second phase. However, in the second phase, Cloth has way more HP, and using the exact same strategy wouldn't take it out in one hit, and we'd risk taking way more damage by activating its Anger Shell. Before attacking, to make things a lot less risky, I start by going for Charm to lower Cloth's attack, and it doesn't hurt that Arvin's there to sponge the hits, so I don't risk getting crit. Once I activate its Anger Shell, after the Charm, it only gets back up to -1, making the crab a lot less threatening, and I can take it out with a second Water Pulse the following turn. Good job, Glaceon, you're growing on me already. At this low level, there's not much more we can catch, so we're gonna have to rely on our dynamic duo to take care of the next few fights. Similar to Katie, Brassius's first two Pokemon fall to Air Slashes, and while Sudowoodo might seem threatening with Rock Throw, its AI always prioritizes Trailblaze if it's slower, which wouldn't even have made Sudowoodo faster for the second turn, even if it didn't flinch. As for the Open Sky Titan, another Pokemon with Stab Rock Throw because of its ability, it just ends up taking a ton of damage from Icy Wind, lowering its speed, which actually makes Popsicle faster the next turn to take it out with a second Ice Shard. Phase 2 is a bit scarier with the additional HP, and I immediately take a ton of damage from Rock Throw, but by using the same strategy we employed for Cloth, I can lower its attack with Charm, and then use Protect to get a bunch of HP back with leftovers. Arvin, of course, does nothing useful in the slightest, except for continuing to be the target of some of the Titan Pokemon's moves. I then start firing off Icy Winds, and to my surprise, the first one does more than half of Bombardier's health. Now that I've put myself in a winning position, of course Arvin starts attacking, which ultimately doesn't matter since an Icy Wind would have finished the job anyway. You're a true Titan killer, Popsicle. To take on Team Star, we need to have at least 3 Pokemon on the team, and thankfully, we're just barely able to find Crabrawlers at level 20. And by roaming around Glaciado Mountain, we can get another Ice Stone to evolve it into whatever this thing is. With Bombardier defeated, Koraidon is able to surf, so we can go to Casseroya Lake to pick up the Life Orb. I plan to use it to power up Drain Punch, which I pick up the TM for right outside Artisan. Having reliable recovery with Drain Punch makes the fight versus Giacomo extremely easy. He immediately takes me below half with a critical hit Metal Claw, which doesn't even matter since I get almost all of it back with the recovery from Drain Punch. The Starmobile is normally a menace to deal with, but our fighting type resists its dark type stats, stab, leaving it with Swift as its best option, which we can easily out-recover by just spamming Drain Punch. With our recently acquired access to Surf, we can also catch a Shelder. Cloyster has terrible special defense and is weak to Electric, but it still might be useful for Iono. The main reason I catch it, however, is because before we fight Iono, we've got our first showdown with Nemona. Cloyster is not the fastest Pokemon, so the solution I find to this first fight is not one I'll be able to rely on for the rest of the game. For now, however, all I need to do is spam rain-boosted Surfs to claim victory over her not fully evolved team. Iono is the first boss fight where you actually face special attacks, so I tend to pick up the Assault Vest before this fight, and I make a point to start the Teal Mask DLC to head to Kitakami. Ice is the least abundant type in the game, so there's not much the DLC has to offer except for Swinub. In its base form, Swinub won't do much for us damage-wise, but having that ground typing to be immune to Electric is priceless in the face of an Electric-type boss fight. Iono is actually kinda tricky to deal with since most of our Pokemon are pretty defensively challenged. We can immediately take care of our Wattrel with Cloyster since Skill Link guarantees that we hit 5 times with Icicle Spear. Bellybolt, on the other hand, is kind of a nightmare. Nothing on the team wants to swap into a Spark, much less attack it for non-lethal damage and take even more from an Electromorphosis boosted Spark. This leaves me with one degenerate strategy, to switch around between Swinub and Cloyster until Bellybolt is completely out of Sparks. Once I've completed the 20-minute project to do so, it's only left with Water Gun, which I can easily tank with my Assault-Vested Frostmoth since Special Defense is basically its only good stat outside of its special attack. Before the big bad Mismagius, we've got to deal with Luxio. I start by pivoting through Coco so that we can swap in Popsicle on a Bite instead of a Spark, risking paralysis. I lower its attack with Charm and then its speed with Icy Wind, but instead of taking it out, I once again pivot through Coco, all so that we're guaranteed to swap in the Ugly Crab versus a Bite, meaning there's no chance we get paralyzed on the switch. Then because of the Icy Wind, we're actually faster than Luxio and can finish it off with a Drain Punch to get back to full HP. Finally, we face Mismagius, and I've given Crabominable a Person Berry just in case we're hit by Confuse Ray. For whatever reason, Mismagius goes for Hex instead, but the damage doesn't matter since we heal up all the way to full with Drain Punch. The next turn, Mismagius actually does go for Confuse Ray, but at this point, it's too late since I've already put it in range of being KO'd. A Person Berry gets rid of Confusion, and with a second Drain Punch, we knock out Mismagius to claim our 3rd gym badge. This leads into a few fights that should be terrible for our ice types on paper, but end up being extremely easy. With a water type on my team, I get rid of Torkoal's Sun with a Rain Dance and simply sweep through her 2 Pokemon with rain-boosted Surfs. Then there's Earthworm, which should be a problem with its powerful Iron Tails, but I wouldn't know since it ended up missing twice. Setting its looks aside, I'm not hating Iron Fist Drain Punch with Crabominable. Our next gym fight is versus Kofu, so I go and pick myself up a Rotom. This guy's literally a refrigerator. Love eating ice cream when it's been inside of my friend. Love my friend, the living mini fridge. I'm just glad we have an electric type. We can get him just in time to take on Kofu, where he actually does surprisingly well, taking out Veluzo with a magnet-boosted Thunderbolt. And while our refrigerating friend can't outrun Wugtrio, we got enough defense to tank whatever it throws at us, to then retaliate with another lethal Thunderbolt. Crabominable is interesting. We could risk it and try for another Thunderbolt, which does KO with certain rolls, but instead of risking it, I deal massive damage by swapping with Volt Switch, sending in Cloyster, who survives anything this thing can throw at us, and after Rocky Helmet damage, it only takes 1 hit of Icicle Spear to knock out Crabominable and claim our 4th gym badge. I then start preparing for Atticus by taking on trainers in the desert, a place that only attracts the biggest brain students. By defeating 5 of them, this League Staffer gives us the TM for Earthquake, which is gonna be perfect for our newly evolved Piloswine. Getting our 4th badge also means we unlock new stuff at Delibird Presents, which are some of the best items we can get throughout the whole game. Atticus is one of those trainers I seem to have trouble with no matter what type I use. The toxic debris on his Starmobile means switching around is a nightmare. If you don't have any poison types, you're gonna have a bad time. Cloyster is able to knock out his lead Skuntank, getting poisoned in the process, which brings in Muck. This Muck only has special attacks, so I swap in Snows-a-Lot, who's once again Assault Vested. Muck is a pretty specially bulky Pokemon, and we're dealing about the same amount of damage. Because I'm faster, I should win the War of Attrition, but I of course end up missing the 9 95% accurate air slash, forcing me to swap out into Popsicle slightly before the job is done. I can take Muck out with a couple of Icy Winds, and this is where we run into trouble. Atticus's regular Revavroom has Stab Ironhead. Yeah, there's just not something I can swap into this, so unfortunately, I've gotta let Popsicle go. This does give me a free switch into Crabominable, who I've taught Earthquake. One Earthquake will tear Revavroom to shreds, but we are slower. A critical hit would lose us Crabominable, and getting flinched would be absolutely devastating. Getting flinched here really sucks, since it means I'm basically guaranteed to lose another Pokemon here. Crabominable is one of my most useful Pokemon with its fighting typing and high damage output, so sadly, it Snows-a-Lot who has to go since it's my least useful Pokemon. Sludge deals just under half to Cloyster, and I miss my 95% accurate Drill Run. How does this keep happening to me? At least I don't get crit, and while the Drill Run doesn't quite take Revavroom out, we can follow it up with an Ice Shard the next turn to finish the job. This brings in the Starmobile Revavroom, and I'm quickly running out of options to switch to. I start by sending in my trusty Refrigerator, who barely takes anything from Smog, and I'm surprised at how well it takes the Noxious Torque. This lets me get some damage with Thunderbolt, and after tanking a second Noxious Torque, I'm able to Volt Switch, allowing me to swap in Koko safely at the end of the turn. I wasn't too hopeful about this since the Starmobile has Flame Charge, but seeing the damage, and then Koko's massive damage output from Earthquake, I realized we'd be making it through this one without losing any more Pokemon. The second Earthquake doesn't quite take it out, so I once again get a KO with a priority Ice Shard, concluding our most stressful fight of the run so far. Preparing for Larry isn't much of a problem since I don't see him putting up much of a fight. There is, however, the issue of Nemona, who we have to face immediately after defeating Larry. My previous strategy of steamrolling with Cloyster isn't gonna work. With the Pokemon available to me, I don't have a lot of great options to take her on, so I go to the mountain and catch what I can get, which in this case is Bergmite and Delibird. As for Larry, I need Mamoswine as my lead for Nemona, so I use it to chip down Kamala and then send in my Chesto-Berried Crabominable. With my Chesto-Berry, I'm able to wake up after taking out Kamala, and then effortlessly deal with the Dunsparce. I can't stay in against Staraptor, so I swap in Mamoswine, who gets the rare opportunity to hit a bird with Earthquake. We then simply tank a Facade and finish the job with Earthquake number 2. This leads into our forced altercation versus our rival Nemona, and this time, she's equipped with a fully evolved Dirge. Mamoswine holding a Choice Scarf is just able to outspeed every single one of Nemona's Pokemon and one-shot them with Earthquakes, with the exception of Skeledirge, where we fall slightly short of the KO. Obviously, I can't let the Dirge sing Torch Song at Mamoswine's funeral, so I'm gonna be forced to switch. This is where things get messy, since I really can't switch any of my Pokemon into a Torch Song. Cloyster might survive a non-boosted Torch Song, but it can't take Skeledirge out in one hit, so I'm forced to let Delibird give me the gift of a free switch. With my previous comment about Cloyster, you might be confused why I'm switching it in. I need some damage on Skeledirge, and while it looks like I can take it out with another Surf, that was the highest roll, and I'm pretty unlikely to take it out with a second one. So after surviving with my Focus Sash, I need to switch again, which unfortunately means another sacrifice. After a provocative lick, the Dirge ignites my Bergmite and sends it straight to the Shadow Realm. With a second sacrifice, I can switch Koko in for free, and after the damage from Surf, I've got enough to take it out with Earthquake, but we still have to face Nemona twice more in the game, and we can't just keep sacrificing Pokemon like this. I guess we're safe for now. With Rhyme coming up, we're in desperate need of some new team members, so I head back to Glaciato to pick up a Sneasel. We're able to just buy a Razor Claw at the store, making it incredibly easy to immediately evolve into Weavile. And while a Dark-type is perfect to take on Rhyme, Weavile's strongest Dark-type move is Assurance at 60 power until level 60. I use a Life Orb to bump up its power, making it enough to take out Banette in one hit. I've also made sure to Choice Scarf Mamoswine to specifically outspeed Mimikyu with Iron Head and break its disguise. Obviously, Mimikyu still gets to attack this turn, but I'm not afraid of anything it can do, even if it crits with Slash. At the end of the turn, Rhyme sends in Houndstone, and we get our attack and special attack boost for both of our Pokemon. This makes the rest of the fight extremely trivial, and if Assurance wouldn't have taken out Houndstone here, I made sure to double target it with Iron Head too. However, we end up in the optimal timeline where Houndstone goes down and Mamoswine gets to take out Mimikyu before it takes its turn. Last out is Toxtricity, which we just clap with Assurance to collect our 6th gym badge. With the Ghost badge under our belt, I take a a page out of Rhymes book and catch myself the Ghost-type Frostlass. After using it to annihilate the Big Donphan, I head back to the slopes to pick up a Cryogonal. With Frostlass in my fridge at the level cap, I can't bring them into the fight versus Nemona, which further limits my options versus the Dirge. I end up pretty much using the same strategy as last time, choice scarfing my way through the first 3 Pokemon on our team until she sends out Skeledirge. Cryogonal has fantastic special defense, so I'm able to survive the first Torch Song. Snowflake is actually faster than Skeledirge, so I can get a bit of damage with Chilling Water before getting nuked by a second Torch Song. All I needed was 8% of damage, and Mamoswine can come in to finish the job. At least we only lost 1 Pokemon instead of 2. This leads us into the fight versus Tulip, which would have been a lot easier if Weavile got any good dark moves outside of Assurance. The 60 base power move just isn't enough to take a lot of these Pokemon out, so we're gonna need some assistance. Cloyster's a girl with a lot of physical bulk, and Tulip's lead for Farigiraf only has physical moves. By using Protect every other turn to get as much HP back from leftovers as possible, I'm able to set up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes and all 3 layers of Spikes before I start attacking. Once I get down to a range where I'm dead to crit, I swap out into Weavile, and Farigiraf annoyingly decides it's time to set up a Reflect. Up until this point, it never set up Reflect and kept spamming Zen Headbutt, and while this is pretty annoying, I was going to be forced to swap out as soon as Gardevoir comes in anyway. My now bulletproof assault-vested mini-fridge easily takes on Dazzling Gleam and can finish Gardevoir off with a Hex the following turn because of all the damage from Poison and Spikes. I always survive whatever Espathra does here, so I decide to just stay in and get some damage with Volt Switch for a slow swap out into Weavile. From here, it's game over for Tulip, since we outspeed Espathra with an Assurance, which isn't quite enough to get the KO on floor just from full HP, but with the damage from 3 layers of Spikes and the 30% power boost from a held Life Orb, we can pick up the KO for an easy 7th gym badge. During my previous 17 challenge runs I've done in Scarlet and Violet, I've found 2 shiny Citadel. So of course, in the one challenge where I'd actually be able to use it, I have no such luck. While I'm out getting encounters, I also make sure to capture Frigibax, the pseudo-legendary of Paldea. This is probably the most broken ice type we get access to in the whole game, but we don't unlock its full power until the level cap passes 54. As for our fellow frozen Fratello Grusha, my guy never stood a chance. He completely wastes the first turn setting up a Tailwind to make sure he outspeeds a Pokemon that he just outspeed naturally with every single mon on his team. The fact that he does outspeed doesn't matter much. He even gets a critical hit with Beartic that doesn't even do half. I just end up getting most of that HP back from a Drain Punch, taking Beartic out, and provided Satitan with the same service. For Altaria, I'm wearing an Assault Vest to be able to tank a Hurricane, which unfortunately hits, gets a Confusion, and I hurt myself in Confusion. This is my typical luck, since a Drain Punch would have just gotten a KO, but this way I get to show Grusha that I'm the true master of ice. I mean, excuse me, what? The guy doesn't even have a mini fridge on his team. It's frankly pretty embarrassing. With all 8 gym badges collected, Nemona and Geeta seem to think that all I've got to do now is take on the Elite Four. It's pretty obvious they've never played this game. Anyone who has knows we first have to take care of Team Star. Obviously, I'm super worried about the next fight versus Eri, since fighting is our most crippling weakness, and she's a menace no matter what type you use. Ortega, on the other hand, I wasn't too worried about, but perhaps I should have been. His 3 Pokemon before the Starmobile all drop like flies, but the vehicle itself put up way more of a fight than I expected. I send in Crabominable, hoping to take less than half from a Steel Roller, which leaves me very disappointed. Realizing I don't have anything great to send in, I swap in Satitan. Blimpo immediately gets confused and falls shortly thereafter in his very first fight. I tried swapping between Satitan and Cloyster to avoid confusion, but it just didn't work in the end. With a bit of luck, I do manage to break through confusion twice, hitting the Starmobile with 10 hits of Icicle Spear. At this range of HP, I'm risking a crit with Cloyster, and I really can't afford to lose it, so I'm gonna have to sack something else. Everyone remaining on the team provides super valuable utility in their secondary typing, and it really sucked to sacrifice Crabominable, who I'd grown really fond of throughout the run. Her sacrifice gives us an opening for Coco to finish the job with an Iron Head, but we just lost 2 Pokemon at a terrible time to do so. To prepare for Eri, I pick up Abomasnow for its snow setting ability. I then go to pick up Beartic, who could have immediately become an MVP of the team with the Slush Rush ability, but that type of luck just doesn't happen to me. I don't know what to tell you. For my final preparations, I make sure to fully evolve Baxcalibur. I then pay a visit to Delibird Presents to pick up a ton of Focus Sashes, cause we are gonna need them. Preparing to fight Eri with a team full of ice types is a nightmare, but I managed to at least come up with somewhat of a strategy. Her Krogunk always wants to Sucker Punch Frostlass, and I can very much use this to my advantage. Sucker Punch does nothing if you use a non-attacking move, allowing me to set up Substitute, burn the second PP by, well, burning Toxicroak with Will-O-Wisp, and then waste the 3 remaining by setting up all 3 layers of spikes. Now at full HP from leftovers, and with no way of Toxicroak outspeeding without its priority move, I can finish it off with a quad-effective Psychic. I was really hoping to see Passimian or Annihilate here, and Lucario really messes things up for me. I decide to utilize my 1 free turn behind a Substitute to get a bit of damage with Psychic. After all, a special defense drop would allow me to stay in and take it out with a second one, but of course I don't get so lucky. Instead, I'm forced to swap into my Choice Scarfed Mamoswine, who's able to outspeed Lucario after switching in and take it out with an Earthquake. This baits out Passimian, and I can basically swap in Spooky for free against a close combat. It's then that my luck finally starts to turn, as I not only connect with a Will-O-Wisp to have Passimian's possible damage, but Spooky also manages to dodge the 95% accurate Rock Tomb. The damage wouldn't have made too much of a difference, but dodging the speed drop is huge. I set up a Substitute, meaning that Rock Tomb doesn't drop my speed. Not only that, it doesn't even break my sub, allowing me to outspeed Passimian the next turn and take it out with a Psychic. Having a Substitute up to take on Annihilate is the best possible scenario. It allows me 2 chances to try and burn this thing with Will-O-Wisp, and thankfully I connect with the first one. Unfortunately, Annihilate has a way stronger move than Rock Tomb. With Stab Rage Fist, it just always breaks the sub even after being burned. Because my sub was damaged from the Rock Tomb, I even try subbing again, but the Rage Fist just breaks it from full Substitute HP. All I can do from here is start attacking, and one Psychic doesn't quite finish Annihilate off, but thankfully the burn allows me to survive 1 Rage Fist to finish the job the next turn. Frostlass the GOAT basically got us all the way to the Starmobile. Unfortunately, we're not going to be outspeeding, and a spin out easily takes me out here. I do end up surviving because of the friendship mechanic, a mechanic I wish wasn't a part of Nuzlocke's, so I just end up going for spikes here to waste a turn, but surviving the hit actually still affects the battle since the second spin out lowers the Starmobile's speed further. I basically tried to make it as if Frostlass wouldn't have survived because of friendship, but the Starmobile getting to -4 speed actually helps me out quite a bit since it's very likely to start setting up with shift gear to get its speed back up. If it were only at -2, I still would have outsped with Beartic, but the Starmobile wouldn't have given me 1 more free turn since it needs to set up shift gear again. At this point, Revavroom is speed neutral and easily outruns Slushy. I still managed to survive with one of my many recently picked up sashes, the biggest purchase of my life until pre-ordering a Nintendo Switch 2. Ironically, this hit actually paralyzes me and I get fully paralyzed, which kind of makes up for that free turn I got because of the friendship mechanic. I next swap in my mini fridge, who's of course also holding a focus sash to be able to survive any one hit. What's great about having Volt Switch here is if the Stormobile would have attacked me instead of setting up, I could have survived at 1 HP and then use Volt Switch at the end of the turn to swap in Guardian, who's also holding a focus sash. Thankfully, I don't end up getting paralyzed here as I survive at 1 HP, and I can finally put this nightmare of a fight behind me with a 100% accurate Blizzard in the snow. With Eri defeated, there's only one Titan standing between us and getting to challenge the Elite Four. And as always, it's a pretty anticlimactic fight as I finish off the Dondozos with Rotom and then swap out into the Guardian to take care of Tatsugiri. Believe it or not, we've lost so many Pokemon, we're down to the last 6 Ice types you can get in the base game. So it's super important we don't lose too many Pokemon against the Elite Four, since there are still 5 extremely difficult fights right after the champion. On the bright side, Ice types have a great matchup into 3 of the 4 Elite Four members, so with a little bit of strategy, we should be able to make it to the champion fairly smoothly. After taking out Whiscash with a turn 1 Energy Ball, I swap out into Baxcalibur to activate Thermal Exchange on a Fire Blast and then finish off Camerupt with an Earthquake. I then switch to Cloyster against Donphan, who can survive a Stone Edge even if it crits, but it just ends up missing, so I take Donphan out with an Icicle Spear, which conveniently I can do in 1 turn because of it being a multi-hit move and not triggering Sturdy. Dugtrio is the most annoying. I start by swapping in my Focus Sashed Weavile, thinking I can just outspeed and take it out with an Ice Spinner, but after it sets up Sandstorm, I really don't want to play the odds with Sandveil, so I instead swap in Abomasnow to change the weather back to snow, causing Dugtrio to use Sandstorm again before it falls to an Energy Ball. With only Earthquake and Liquidation as its attacking moves, Clodsire basically can't touch Abomasnow, allowing me to just stay in and finish the fight. The second battle is versus Poppy, and unlike the other Elite Four members where we have a great match, matchup, this one is exceptionally bad. I give Coco one of my many focus sashes and immediately take Copperajah out without taking any damage or allowing it to set up Stealth Rock. The focus sash allows me to stay in versus Magnezone despite a potential Flash Cannon. However, Magnezone just ends up setting up Light Screen, meaning I get to take out its final hit point with an Ice Shard without my sash being broken as Bronzong comes in. I don't actually have any great moves to hit Bronzong with, but it does give me one free hit with Ice Fang for a little bit of chip damage before I've got to swap out into Guardian to set up the Snow. I can't afford losing my Snow setter, so I'm basically just hopping in to get the Snow up and get a 50% defense boost before swapping in Baxcalibur. A Crunch isn't quite enough to take Bronzong out from this range, but with the defense boost from the Snow, I'm perfectly safe from another Iron Head and can finish Bronzong off in 2 turns. As Corviknight comes out, I'm still safe from a critical hit here, so I decide to just stay in and go for a Crunch, which ends up getting a defense drop, and ironically, I am struck by that crit. To not lose Baxcalibur, I swap in Cloyster, who can eat anything on the switch, and then fight back with an Icicle Spear, which is enough to take out Corviknight, bringing in the real threat, Tinkaton. Terra Steel boosted Gigaton Hammer is very dangerous, but just like in chess, we're not allowed to just not make a move. Whatever I do, I'm probably losing something here, so I was pretty happy to see Tinkaton misses as it goes for Gigaton Hammer. It can't drop the hammer twice in a row, so I'm struck by a Stone Edge before Volt switching out and sending in the Guardian to boost my defense. Unfortunately, I'm kind of in the same terrible position here, since I still can't afford to lose the Guardian, and something has to take the hit. I just wanted an autonomous mini fridge to be my friend. Is that so much to ask, Poppy? The worst part about losing my fridge here is I realize I'm not gonna take care of Tinkaton with one drill run, and seeing the damage from Gigaton Hammer, I realize I probably could have swapped in Cloyster and still had my refrigerator. These very human mistakes are what make Nuzlockes interesting, but they're also what makes it so painful to lose your Pokemon since it's your fault. And this time it ended up costing me someone who I considered a pretty chill friend. The bad news is we're down to just 5 Pokemon. The good news is that the 2 fights before the champion are essentially free. I start by taking out Larry's Tropius with a quad-effective Ice Spinner from Weavile, which baits in Staraptor. I can't get the KO after Intimidate, so I swap to Baxcalibur, who always survives a close combat. With a Choice Scarf, we're able to outspeed all of Larry's Pokemon, and a single Ice Fang is enough to take each of them out in one hit, except for his Flamigo, which he's conveniently programmed to send out last since it's his Terra Pokemon. We're baiting close combat, so I can simply deal with it by sending in Weavile, who I've given one of my focus sashes to always survive the close combat with 1 HP, and after Flamigo drops its defense, a single Ice Spinner is enough to get us the dub. With a team full of only Ice types, Hassel was never going to be difficult to beat, but with a held Choice Scarf, Baxcalibur simply outspeeds all of his Pokemon and can one-shot each and every one of them with a simple Glaive Rush. Champion Geeta isn't the final boss of the game, and her team really reflects that. Now that we're finally at level 60, I can take out Espathra with a single Night Slash from Weavile. Avalugg is what I'm most scared of on our team, and it immediately gets the highest roll Body Press into Cloyster as I swap in. This is extremely bad. Basically, any moderately good roll the next turn from Avalugg, and Cloyster's Clam Chowder. My 5 hits of Rock Blast end up doing over half, and Avalugg goes for a second Body Press, leaving me at exactly 1 HP. Having leftovers instead of Rocky Helmet would have been way safer here, but one of my hits the first turn was a critical hit, and without that crit, I wouldn't be able to 2-hit KO Avalugg, which is why I needed the chip damage from Rocky Helmet. King Gambit's another huge threat, but I can just give Baxcalibur a Focus Sash to guarantee I survive anything it throws at me, even if it crits, and then take it out with a Brick Break the following turn. Because it missed Stone Edge, I can just stay in against the Go-Goat and take it out with a single Icicle Crash, bringing in Veluza. I was hoping a Glaive Rush would take it out, but it doesn't really matter that I take double damage afterwards since my Focus Sash is still intact. Finally, we've got to deal with Geeta's ace Glimora, and to do so, I've given Mamoswine the Assault Vest to better take special hits. It doesn't hurt that Coco's ground typing means we take neutral damage from Terra Blast Rock, allowing us to comfortably survive to fire off an Earthquake, which doesn't quite get the KO, but it does leave Glimora in range of being finished off by a priority Ice Shard. So we managed to get through the Elite Four while only losing 1 Pokemon. It was my only levitating Pokemon, so I really hope I won't have to regret losing it. Because there aren't any more Pokemon for us to catch and replace our fallen team member, we basically just have to go into the next fight immediately. After one-shotting Clavel's Oranguru, he brings in Gyarados, so I swap in Cloyster to tank a Stone Edge, which I simply dodge. This thing's really dangerous since nothing on my team really wants to take a Stone Edge and Cloyster is my only option, but if I get crit by one of the Stone Edges, I basically just immediately lose my Cloyster, but Gyarados misses both. To finish it off, I use Icicle Spear instead of Rock Blast since it has 100% accuracy. Abomasnow comes in and boosts its own defenses by 50% with Snow, but it also boosts my defenses of every single one of my Pokemon in the process. Because Cloyster's at full HP, I just stay in and launch a Rock Blast as Abomasnow sets up Aurora Veil. This does significantly further boost Clavel's defenses, but because I got Abomasnow so low, I can finish it off with a few hits of Rock Blast. Houndoom threatens a KO with Fire Blast, so I swap in Baxcalibur, who tanks the hit and gets a handy attack boost in the process. I am risking a crit with a second one, but I really can't swap anything into a Fire Blast, so I have to hope it doesn't crit, and it simply misses. Not getting hit and having this amount of HP is actually great. Clavel has one more turn of Snow and Aurora Veil, but Poltegeist is so weak defensively that a +1 crunch still takes it out. Meowscarada comes out, and my best bet is probably swapping to Abomasnow, but as long as I don't get crit by Play Rough, I can just instantly take it out with an Icicle Crash, and that's exactly what I do. Defeating Clavel means we've got to take on Penny's evolutions, but even our mere team of 5 offers counters to every single one of our Mons, even Sylveon just gets completely destroyed by Mamoswine. Before proceeding and taking on the remaining 3 fights of the game, which will be the most difficult for our Ice types, I decide to pay a visit to the Indigo Disc. Now obviously, the Indigo Disc DLC features fights that are way higher level than the level cap of 67, which is the final cap of the game. But the only battle we actually have to take part in to catch Pokemon in the terrarium is this one versus Lacey. To beat her, I've got to buy another Choice Scarf, which still wasn't as expensive as my Nintendo Switch 2 at $100,000. With the 2 scarves, Mamoswine and Baxcalibur are so fashionable that they outspeed both the Plusle and Minun to take them out with 2 Earthquakes. Both are dead to the Excadrill that comes in, so I've got to switch them both out. Cloyster's bulky enough to take a hit, especially in the snow, and if he ends up targeting Abomasnow, I've got a held Focus Sash. As I'm hit by Rock Slide, I get a bit of mixed luck. While my Drill Run gets a critical hit, Abomasnow just gets flinched. With my Focus Sash now broken, Excadrill does see kill with Iron Head, so I swap into Sneasel, who, you guessed it, is holding another one of my Focus Sashes. I then pick up the kill with Icicle Spear since I don't want to miss the 95% accurate Drill Run, and just like that, we've defeated the level 72 Excadrill standing between us and catching Pokemon in the terrarium. My first order of business is to locate an Alolan Vulpix to fill out the team. In the water, we're also able to pick up Lapras, which is a pretty amazing addition. Then, once my Alolan Vulpix is evolved, I can head into the first battle of the 3 with a full team of 6. I didn't want Mamoswine to sit out the fight, but it's so close to the level cap that I can't afford to overlevel it before the final fight. And without Mamo, it's a lot more difficult to face Garganacl. He sets up Stealth Rock as I swap in, so I at least don't take any damage on the switch. I unfortunately don't get the defense drop with Razor Shell, and Stone Edge does a ton of damage. I make sure to go for Protect the next turn since the Leftovers recovery will allow me to survive a Stone Edge as long as it doesn't crit. I was fully prepared to lose Cloyster here, but Garganacl just ends up missing, allowing me to pick up the KO the next turn with a couple of Icicle Spears. By avoiding Toedscruel's Earth Power, Cloyster picks up another KO completely for free. To fight Scovillain, I switch to Baxcalibur. It unfortunately went for Energy Ball instead of Fire Blast on the switch, so I don't quite get the KO, but Baxcalibur wasn't in crit range, and Thermal Exchange means I can't ever get burned, so there really wasn't any risk. I can easily defeat Cloyster with Abomasnow, which also sets up my defensive Snow, only leaving Arvin with his Mabostiff. This is Lapras's time to shine, or rather, Lapras's time to sing. After tanking a couple of hits, Lapras sings a Paris song before I swap back into Cloyster. I then waste a Paris turn by going for Protect, and since I've got nothing to lose, I try for the double Protect and actually just end up succeeding. At the end of the turn, Mabostiff's Paris count falls to 0 for a very easy victory. Before we're allowed to fight the final boss, we've got to take on Nemona one last time. And what's good about this fight is you don't actually get any experience, so we're not punished for bringing Mamoswine despite being so close to overleveling. With a Choice Scarf, we beat Lycanroc one final time, which baits in Pawmot, a Pokemon that I really didn't want to have to deal with, so I'd say that worked out perfectly. Orthworm, on the other hand, is immune to ground-type moves with Earth Eater, so I've got to swap out since I'm locked into Earthquake with my Scarf. Abomasnow thankfully doesn't get its defense dropped by Iron Tail on the Switch, and in a bizarre twist of events, Earthworm misses its next Iron Tail as I somehow connect with Focus Miss. My wide lens gambit ends up paying off and I swap out of Abomasnow into Baxcalibur as Goodra comes in. A Sludge Wave barely does anything due to my held Assault Vest, and I can one-shot the dragon with a Glaive Rush. Dunsparce comes out next, but it can't do much to Cloyster with its massive defense, so I take it out after a few turns of Icicle Spear, even though they don't do too much damage after a bunch of coils. As Skeledirge comes out, I unfortunately don't have a better way to beat this thing than to just sacrifice a Pokemon again, but with 7 Pokemon remaining, that at least leaves me with a full team of 6 for the final fight versus Sada. I really just should have sent in Mamo here and taken Skeledirge out with a Scarf Earthquake. Baxcalibur still does decent damage, but leaves Skeledirge with a sliver of health, and while Baxcalibur is able to survive a +1 Torch Song with a held Assault Vest, a critical hit there would have instantly lost me my best Pokemon. With exactly 6 Pokemon left and the final main quest of the game completed, I start making the hour-long arduous journey through Area 0 to take on the final boss. Professor Sada leads with Slitherwing, which is quad weak to flying, making it an instant victim of Weavile's Aerial Ace. Jiggly comes out second, so I send in the Guardian to set up my snow. This isn't a great matchup since I'm not dealing a ton of damage with Blizzard, and Screamtail's able to heal back some of the damage with Drain Punch. The Guardian quickly gets sick of that nonsense and lands a Freeze. This means Screamtail's basically completely Jiggly f***ed. Abomasnow's quad weakness to fire brings in Sada's Flutter Mane. I switch in my still Assault Vested Baxcalibur, hoping to pick up the attack boost. Unfortunately, Abomasnow was also in range of Power Gem, so I don't get a boost and my Icicle Crash falls short of taking Flutter Mane out. Thankfully, Baxcalibur gets priority Ice Shard, so we can knock it out, bringing in Sandy Shocks. To tank a Flash Cannon, I first pivot into Lapras, who tanks it comfortably. I make the switch to bait Discharge so I can swap in Coco for free, and then pick up the KO with a Choice Scarfed Earthquake. Locked into the move, I've gotta swap out against Brute Bonnet, setting up the snow with the Guardian as I eat a Giga Drain on the Switch. I even managed to survive a Sucker Punch with 5 HP as I plan to sacrifice Abomasnow and get off a Blizzard. Realizing I can keep Abomasnow alive, I swap in Weavile and take Brute Bonnet out with a quad-effective X-Scissor, which brings out Sada's final Pokemon, Roaring Moon. Weavile unfortunately can't take this thing out in one hit, and I just couldn't bring myself to sacrifice a Pokemon we've had on the team for so long. This sentiment is extremely bad news for our most recent team member, who gets blown to bits by a bunch of rocks, so I can send in Ninetales. Putting another one of my bazillion Focus Sashes to use, I'm able to survive a Stone Edge with 1 HP. Sorry, Sada, your crits have no power here. And strike back with a quad-effective Stab, Dazzling Gleam, which somehow fails to get the KO. Fine. I've got to make one last switch to Mamoswine, who dodges an Earthquake on the Switch with some BM Snowcloak BS, before finishing the fight with an Ice Shard, meaning I just beat a Pokemon Scarlet Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Ice types. It's possible, folks. You can beat this game even with the worst type, and I gotta say, it was a blast to come up with strategies to not get them constantly KO'd. Believe it or not, the only types I haven't played Scarlet and Violet with are Poison and Normal, so let me know which one of the two you want me to try the next time I play these games, and we'll see if I think they're as great as Ice types, which I thought were pretty chill.